Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, on the defensive, San Diego searching for NFL support, touting its plan for a new home for the Chargers.
And fewer San Diegans are dying in car collisions, but fatalities between cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists are up, especially in these neighborhoods. I'm Peggy Pico with Vision Zero's plan to eliminate all San Diego traffic deaths. Plus, my conversation with best-selling author Don Winslow about his new novel, The Cartel, an epic sequel of the war on drugs in Mexico.
We need a Steve Jobs in oil and gas.
Banking on oil production, the big ideas that may change how oil companies drill and the cost savings for customers. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Keeping the lights on this summer, a confident energy forecast from state and local power officials today. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says the weather could make things quite interesting.
San Diego Gas and Electric officials say they have enough power available this summer. SDG&E President Steve Davis says there are plenty of power plants and transmission lines to get the electricity to homeowners and businesses.
This summer, we are anticipating a peak demand of 4,800 megawatts under normal conditions. However, if we have a prolonged heat wave, it could add another 10% to that load.
San Diego set a record for peak electricity usage last September. Even though the overall summer was mild, the SDG&E service area drew 4,800 megawatts of electricity on that day. This summer is expected to be extra challenging because of the drought.
The fire activity this year is well above the last 5 years average, 50% higher. The average has been about 1,600. We're at 2,400. So this is a season when fires obviously can come. And of course, they threaten the transmission and distribution system and can cause problems for us.
The California Independent System Operator manages the state's electricity grid, making sure power is available when it's needed. President Steve Berberick says he doesn't worry about the power infrastructure so much, but he is concerned about things that state and local officials can't control.
We plan for heat. We plan for extended periods of use. What we all have to be mindful of is that really hot day when you have fires out to the east of here. That makes for a bad electrical day.
The sun will go a long way in painting the power supply picture this summer. Will there be wildfires? Will there be enough hydroelectric power? Will there be a heat wave that stresses air conditioning resources? Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
TMI concerns over covered California. Privacy rights experts are worried about too much information. California's Health Insurance Exchange wants to create a database with health information from its 1.4 million enrollees. Officials say they'll use the information to measure overall patterns. Privacy rights advocates say folks should be given the choice to keep their records out of the database. South Carolina voters are ready to debate calls to remove the Confederate flag from Capitol grounds. The spotlight on Confederate symbols follows the deadly shooting at a historic black Charleston church last week. A San Diego lawmaker is calling for a name change here at Robert E. Lee Elementary School in Paradise Hills. Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez says the school deserves a name everyone can admire. She says Robert E. Lee is not that person. On the defense, members of the Charger Stadium Task Force held an hour-long meeting today with NFL executives in New York. They met to discuss building a new venue in Mission Valley and keeping the Chargers from moving to Los Angeles. The team has been seeking a new playing facility for nearly 15 years and recently acquired land in Carson in case they can't reach a deal here. San Diego estimates a new stadium would cost more than $1 billion and require a public vote. Taking a look at a crowded field for next year's supervisor's race, the goal for candidates, unseated incumbent Supervisor Dave Roberts. He's accused of favoritism and misspending money. iNewsSource reporter Joe Girardi looked at what may help or hurt Republicans who may challenge him next year. Joe, can you size this race up for us?
In 2012, Roberts became the first Democrat elected to the Board of Supervisors in 20 years. His district stretches from La Jolla to Escondido, and now that he's under fire, 4 names of Republicans have pretty quickly surfaced. The only candidate who's made it official is Escondido Mayor Sam Abbott, who entered the race 2 weeks ago. We've also got San Diego City Councilman Mark Kersey, State Assemblyman Brian Mainshine, and Encinitas Mayor Kristen Gaspar.
And of course, the June primary is still a year away. Is it too soon to have a front runner in this race?
Yes and no. In talking with folks knowledgeable about the district, you hear Brian Mainshine mentioned a lot. He's got the most money, good relations with the county Republican Party, and is well known and popular in his state assembly district, which includes a lot of the supervisorial district.
And what about other candidates in the race?
San Diego City Councilman Mark Kersey is an interesting one. He's popular among his fellow elected Republicans and party officials, but he's a bit of an untested campaigner. He ran unopposed in 2012, and his only experience other than that was a losing campaign for Solana Beach City Council in 2004. Escondido Mayor Sam Abbott is a tenacious campaigner and may be the best fundraiser in Escondido history. But he's taken some strong positions on immigration and other topics that could alienate some moderate voters in the district. And then you've got Encinitas Mayor Kristen Gaspar. She's got the lowest profile of the 4, the smallest fundraising base, but she is from the coast, and coastal voters are going to be a large voting bloc. The question is if she can raise enough money to get her message out to inland voters who may not know her.
And Joe, you've mentioned the County Republican Party a few times. What kind of role will it play?
Well, it should be significant. The party is going to endorse. Their chairman told me that they won't vote an endorsement for at least several months until all candidates are in. But once they do endorse, that politician is going to have a big leg up on the competition. The party is going to have a lot of resources to put their guy or gal into the runoff.
iNewsSource reporter Joe Girardi. New problems connected to water management in California. The directors of the tiny Rainbow Water District voted today to oppose a proposed merger with the Fallbrook Water District. Board members characterize the plan as a hostile takeover rather than a merger. They fear their predominantly agricultural users would suffer higher rates under a consolidation. San Diego mobilizing behind a plan to eliminate all traffic deaths. The deadline set in the Vision Zero report is 2025. Peggy Pico shows us where we are seeing fatal crashes between cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists.
The Vision Zero San Diego report found nearly a third of all collisions occurred in 8 corridors on streets from Pacific Beach to downtown, Mid-City to Southeast San Diego. Joining me with who's most at risk of dying from car collisions and the plan to reduce traffic deaths in San Diego to zero are my guests Jim Stone with Circulate San Diego and Randy Van Vleck with City Heights Community Development Corporation. And Jim, just briefly explain to us, what is Vision Zero?
Actually, Vision Zero is a simple, elegant, but powerful concept of zero traffic deaths. It's a zero tolerance for people dying as a result of a car crash, a pedestrian crash, or a bike crash.
Let's put this situation into perspective right now for us. How many people die each year while walking or biking here in San Diego?
Well, the last year that we have the most up-to-date statistics is 2013, and there were 34 people who died while walking or biking in the city. And you compare that to the murder rate of 39, it's almost equivalent. And if you fold in the number of people overall who die as a result of traffic incidents, it's actually 81. So traffic incidents take twice as many lives as murders in the city of San Diego.
And specifically, I understand, Randy, City Heights is a big area for traffic deaths. What are some of the, what's the situation there?
Yeah, unfortunately, you have one of the highest number of collisions happening there. In the span of 9 years, we had 17 people die on walking or biking on University Avenue and El Cajon Boulevard. Also, in our school zones, we had 114 kids hit by cars in 4 years while walking or biking. So we have a lot of people being hit by cars, and we don't have the safe streets and the infrastructure that makes it easier to walk and bike in City Heights.
Before we get to what's to blame on that, I did want to ask you, Jim, is there particular activities that are more risky than others? Is walking more risky than cycling? Or is it just sort of the same.
Well, that's a difficult number to pull out because you have to look at the number of people walking versus the number of people biking. About 1% of the people in San Diego bike on a regular basis, about 16% walk. So you'd have to work out all those percentages, but when you compare it to driving, you're definitely more at risk if you walk or you bike as compared to driving.
I see. And Randy, getting back to what's to blame for these traffic deaths, especially in City Heights?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the city's actually conducted an analysis looking at what are the causes for all these crashes, where are they happening and why. The majority of the crashes can be prevented through increased investment in bike and pedestrian infrastructure, safer street designs, lower speed limits, safer traveling speeds, and different types of infrastructure that make it easier to walk and bike. So we know that that's a major factor. Because we don't have that investment in City Heights, we have a higher rate of collisions happening for people who walk and bike.
No, Jim, if these are some of the plans, are there more plans? And I understand the city's on board for trying to implement some of these, correct?
Well, the mayor came out yesterday and endorsed our Vision Zero concept. The next step is for the city council to adopt a resolution, approve a resolution for Vision Zero, and part of that would be to establish a Vision Zero advisory committee, and that committee would be looking at these 8 corridors to begin with and start making the necessary improvements, slow cars down, get people safer.
Now, Vision Zero, zero amount of traffic deaths seems unrealistic to some people, but there's been some improvement, right? This started in Sweden years ago?
Started in Sweden. New York City was the first city in the United States to adopt Vision Zero. In the first year, they reduced pedestrian deaths by 26%. They're down to the same level as 1910. So there's definitely an opportunity to turn things around, and so we think it's achievable. Really, no loss of life is acceptable.
And this Vision Zero focused on 8 corridors here in San Diego. Yes. We have a map of that. Why focus on these areas?
That's where the crashes are happening. So it makes the most sense to apply your infrastructure dollars to make the improvement, to do the law enforcement and change people's behavior, and focus where the problem is.
And Randy, do you have any idea as far as how much this would cost the city? I know they did come out and support, as you said, on Monday for this. And who's going to pay for these changes?
That's another good question. I believe Circulate San Diego looked at in the report, found that we need about $15 million to make the Vision Zero happen in terms of the infrastructure required to create the safe, livable streets and the programming that's also necessary. We're already paying for it through the Transnet sales tax, a half-cent sales tax that the voters approved. So there's a big pot of funding that already exists that the city has, and then make decisions about where that funding should go. So there's a lot of opportunity there to look at that pot and make sure that it's going to the communities that need it most, like City Heights, Southeast San Diego, Sherman Heights.
All right, Randy Van Vleck and Jim Stone, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Every summer across the U.S., events are held to celebrate those who have survived cancer and give hope to the recently diagnosed. Today at Scripps Memorial Hospital in La Jolla, dozens of cancer survivors gather to celebrate the joy of life. Guest speaker Laura Rope is one of them, diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer in 2008. This former trial lawyer now seeks to inspire others through music, writing, and narrating audiobooks.
It's very important for you to seize the day, figure out who you really are, not who you're supposed to be, not who your dad wants you to be, not who everybody tells you you're supposed to be. Who are you really? Because I was a lawyer for many years, and I walked the walk, and I talked the talk, but I'm actually a goofball and a complete whack job, and I never let that out. Now I do, and I'm more successful than I ever was as a lawyer, just being my true self.
Medical community has made huge strides in treating breast cancer. Survivors Day is a chance to recognize the 14 million people nationwide still thriving after being diagnosed with cancer of all types. This marked the 24th annual Survivors Day at Scripps Hospital. Oil prices are down more than 40% from a year ago. The drop is leading oil companies to innovate and become more efficient. Lee Patterson of Inside Energy shows us how.
During the fracking-induced drilling frenzy of the last few years, U.S. oil production has skyrocketed. But this shale oil is different from conventional crude. A lot more gas comes up to the surface during oil production.
So what we're trying to do here is capture any of the gas.
Sometimes producers just get rid of it.
It would get burned in those 4 combustors right over there. We'd get to breathe it.
Instead, Hans Mueller wants to use that gas. His company, EcoVapor Recovery Systems, works with oil producers to separate out the natural gas and sell it.
Wherever there's a flare that is burning gas and that gas isn't being used for anything else, to me it just seems like an opportunity for us to come in and increase the efficiency of the entire operation. And essentially using every part of the buffalo.
Mueller says the value of the captured gas, once sold, can be 3 times greater than the cost of an EcoVapor unit. That's a strong sales pitch. And EcoVapor is now working on a cheaper version of its current system, hoping to draw industry in. With oil prices so low, oil companies are looking for ways to cut costs quickly with little investment up front. And so some energy startups are pitching their products as ways to save money during the downturn.
Liquid Glide is a truly revolutionary product.
At this year's IHS CERAWeek Energy Conference, energy startups hawking their wares had a message for big oil.
And should you decide to work with us, we will save you billions of dollars.
They pitched everything from a product that makes anything less sticky, including crude oil, to wearable tech and thermoelectric power generation.
With the E1, waste heat is now valuable.
Alphabet Energy, a Bay Area startup, recently unveiled a generator which can be used to replace diesel in trucks and compressors, reducing emissions and costs. Alphabet's first customer for the E1 generator, oil and gas giant Encana.
When it comes to rapid innovation, moving very quickly, startups generally do that a lot better. So oil and gas companies are now investing in efficiency, and we fit, squarely into that bucket.
And oil executives from major companies seem to agree, at least on the importance of innovation.
I think the low price of oil is creating a great opportunity for young people to build careers as entrepreneurs.
One is, you got to do it bolder. Second of which, you have to do it faster. And third of which is, you got to do it smarter.
Innovation is a requirement for survival. Sustaining it through a down cycle is a requirement for making innovation achieve that objective.
Just down the hall, representatives from Statoil and General Electric talked about crowdsourcing ideas for new environmental and economic projects. That means asking for pitches online from think tanks, startups, and regular people.
And we hope the greater folks of our planet come up with solutions that we can utilize in our operations.
Producers are also using downhole technology to collect detailed data on their wells.
This is the inside of one of our downhole gas sensors.
WellDog is a Wyoming company that makes these sort of underground sensors, and since the downturn, its sales have tripled, largely because WellDog can help oil companies get more out of the ground.
In boom times, optimizing can lead to increased profits. In challenging times, optimizing can lead to the difference between profits and no profits.
Adoption of these technologies has helped oil companies bring spending down, way down. IHS, a consulting company, predicts well costs will decrease more than 30% by the end of this year. But oil companies have managed much of that by squeezing savings out of their service companies, demanding they lower their prices on things like trucking, drilling, and equipment.
But that's kind of a one-time event, one-time occurrence. They can only really get that much pricing out of the market and out of their wells in 2015 this year. After that, then they'll have to get back focused on things like operational efficiency, optimizing their wells, just getting more production out of their wells at the same costs.
And many of those operational efficiencies on the table today could make oil and gas better neighbors. Innovations that would cut emissions, save on fuel, and reduce the use of resources would also minimize the impact on nearby communities. For example, GE and Statoil's project to reduce frac sand would also reduce the number of trucks bringing sand to drill sites. And that means less traffic in communities near oil and gas development. But industry analyst Carl Larry is deeply skeptical that big oil will get smarter because he says it doesn't have to.
Fossil fuels, it's a simple project. We drill, we get oil, we refine it. That's all we need to do is make money on that. Coming up with newfangled ways, it's expensive. And right now, there's not a lot of margin for error to take a chance and put in new technology.
Making substantial changes in the way that we drill, Larry says, requires vision.
We need a Steve Jobs in oil and gas. We need somebody who's going to go out there and take a chance. Big companies aren't. They're just going to keep their budgets going, doing what they do right now and making money. But the ones who take the chances are the small businesses, the people who have the guts to take it out and try something new.
And with new products ranging from incredibly unsticky surfaces to waste-reducing systems, big ideas during the downturn are starting to come from the small guys. For Inside Energy, I'm Lee Patterson.
That story was produced by Inside Energy, a collaborative reporting project made possible by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The drug war beyond the border raging on in a new novel by a San Diego author. Don Winslow talks with Peggy Pico tonight about his book and why he says there are no winners in the drug war.
Called a true-to-life, ripped from the headlines epic story, The Cartel is a sequel that spans the past decade of the Mexican-American drug war and the men and women who wage it. It's written by my guest, acclaimed author of 19 books and a former private investigator, Don Winslow. Welcome to Evening Edition.
It's nice to be here. Thank you.
Now, Don, after you wrote The Power of the Dog, also about the drug war, you said you wouldn't write another sequel, but here you are. What changed your mind?
Yeah, after I wrote Dog, which took me about 5.5 years, I thought I was done with this drug business because it was grueling, it was harsh. But then looking at the events in Mexico, and we live not far from the border, of course, and seeing how this violence was spiraling out of control, and we seemed to be in sort of a new phase, I finally decided, I don't think I could sit on the sidelines anymore. I want to continue this story.
Now, this is a composite novel of sorts. It's based on true stories, but it's sort of this composite idea. How much has changed in the past decade since you wrote Power of the Dog compared to The Cartel?
Well, a lot. Principally, it's been the militarization of the war on drugs, that the drug cartels went out, hired their own private armies, made up mostly of former special forces soldiers. And so that triggered sort of an arms race with the drug cartels. So if one got a little private army, then the next one needed a private army. And then when the government came in, they realized they couldn't handle it with regular police forces. They brought in the army. And so what had been a criminal activity became a war.
Now, you've said the war on drugs, and this is a quote from you, Mexico's is not Mexico's drug problem, it's America's drug problem. What do you mean by that?
Well, we're the buyer, aren't we? So no buyer, no seller. So, we often point our finger at corruption in Mexico. If I were in Mexico, I'd be looking north of the border and asking about the corruption up here. What's the corruption in our collective soul that makes us the largest drug market in the world?
You live in San Diego County, and you touched on this. We live close to the border. Do you think that we have a better understanding of the drug cartel, of the drug war, because we live so close, or do you think it's just as easy for us to look away?
No, I think people on the border do have a better understanding of it because we live with it every day, because there is proximity, because families are on both sides of the border. There's just much more communication between an area like San Diego and Mexico than there is, say, Ohio or Pennsylvania. So proximity, yeah, I think, familiarity.
Now, you name and dedicate this book to 130 journalists who were murdered or disappeared during the time that you were writing this book, The Cartel. Why was that important to you?
I'm not a journalist, I'm a novelist. And these two novels together, The Power of the Dog and The Cartel, tell the story of a 45-year-old vendetta between a DEA agent and a drug lord. So I write fiction. But I think all writers are family, in a sense. If they're not my brothers and sisters, they're my cousins. And so I felt a responsibility as someone who sits relatively safely on this side of the border to acknowledge and to honor those journalists who were killed, who gave their lives trying to tell this story.
The main character in your book tries to face down the devil without losing his soul, as it's written. Do you think this drug war is winnable?
No.
How come?
Well, as long as we make drugs a criminal matter, only criminals can sell them. If only criminals can sell them, there's no recourse to law. If there's no recourse to law, then there's only a recourse to violence. And so as long as drugs are prohibited, and we still want them at the same time, this war will continue in one form or another.
And it sounds like you have an idea, then, the most effective way maybe to end this war.
Legalization.
Of?
Drugs.
All right. Author Don Winslow, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I want to let folks know that Don Winslow will be talking about the cartel at Warwick's tonight at 7:30. You've got some time to get over there, and at the Mysterious Galaxy this Sunday at 2 p.m.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next news hour, how a flood of migrants fleeing war and violence have overrun a Greek island. That's Tuesday on the PBS NewsHour.
Remembering comic actor Dick Van Patten, he died this morning in Santa Monica due to complications from diabetes. He was best known as the patriarch of the TV's 8 is Enough family, which actually aired from 1977 to 1981. His film roles include Spaceballs, The Santa Trap, and Soylent Green. And Patten was 86 years old. Well, summer's in full swing, shorts and tank top weather in San Diego. Kids even playing outside at the waterfront park downtown. Some cooled off, splashing around in shallow puddles. Of course, we're expecting 70s by the beaches over the next few days. Warming up for the inland valleys with temperatures there mostly in the low 80s. 80s as well in the mountain areas if you're headed that way, and triple digits for the desert areas. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Midday Edition on the radio, employees never eligible for sick leave before are about to benefit from a new state law. We'll hear about the new rules in place next month and how San Diego employers are preparing. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good evening.